Okay.
Hi everyone. We are very glad to be here today, me and my co-worker.
Yes.
Today we will provide a series of the workshops, and the name of the workshop, Why is this so hard? Using Maslow's hierarchy of needs to explain why we feel the way we do. Before we will start, I will introduce myself. I'm more than sure many of you, you're already familiar with me, but I will introduce if someone is new joining today. My name is Lucine Hambartsumian. I'm a master level psychologist and group therapy coordinator. I work at counseling and psychological services here at University of Michigan-Dearborn. And my colleague, Charlie, he will introduce himself. Please, Charlie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie Starkman. I am a staff psychologist and the outreach coordinator at Counseling and Psychological Services, or CAPS. Just like Lucine, I've been giving workshops throughout the spring and summer terms. So I'm looking forward to presenting today on Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs and talking about this. It's important to think about this in the context of everything that is going on right now. Absolutely.
Okay, before we will move forward for our workshop, it's really good to use Maslow's hierarchy as a reminder. And I'm more than sure all of you very well familiar with this pyramid of hierarchies. Probably started from high school when first time you had your introductory to psychology class. But it's good to refresh because the Maslow's pyramid of hierarchies that was presented, it was his theoretical work when he was studying human motivations, and it has really good parallel with other developmental theories that were presented in social psychology, in personal psychology. And he divided on the three major groups, like basic needs, which considers like our physiological needs, safety needs, psychological needs, belonging and love needs that all of us we craving to have, and esteem needs. And the highest level, he named this level as a self-fulfillment needs. An interesting thing that he divided like first four parts of those needs: motivational needs, growing needs that we have, security needs. It's like deficiency needs, which means when we don't have those needs, when we don't meet criteria of those needs for a long time, we are starting to experience difficulties, and it can be represented like anxiety, high level of stress. And for people who cannot meet their safety needs, it can be like even traumatic events, PTSD, depending which kind of situation they are. And if people are not able to meet their self-esteem needs, they feel like they are not recognized by others. And the highest part of self-actualization, self-fulfillment need, he named this as a growing needs. And we are moving forward, and Charlie will talk about psychological and safety needs.
So we are going to start by looking at our basic needs. So these are our physiological and our safety needs. So when we start with our physiological needs, these are the basics: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, reproduction, and sex. These are things that we need to survive. They are vital to survival. And Maslow framed it as, these are the most important needs, and all other needs become secondary until these basic needs are met. And one important characteristic of Maslow's hierarchy is framing it in the context of a person is always striving to move to the different levels of need. The person is always looking to get to the top of that pyramid. But if we don't get our basic needs met, there's no potential for forward movement. So if the needs aren't met, a person might start to experience a strong sense of dissatisfaction, unhappiness, depression, and, like Lucine was saying, anxiety and stress. So clearly, and I think we've all experienced this, if we don't get enough sleep, if we don't eat, we're dehydrated. Clearly, this doesn't just impact our physical self, it impacts our emotional needs as well, and our emotional functioning. So this is something that is important for all of us to keep in mind. It might just seem like these are very basic, but we know that for so many, it's extremely hard to come by just these basic needs. So also thinking about why the physiological needs are so important under the hierarchy is that it's essential to pursue that intrinsic motivation. And later on, when we talk about self-actualization, I'll talk a bit more about intrinsic motivation, but it's basically that internal drive to move forward. And once a person meets those physiological needs, those basic needs, they've developed enough intrinsic motivation from Maslow's perspective to be able to move up the hierarchy. And now that we have a basic understanding of the physiological needs, I'll talk a bit more about our safety needs. So these include personal security, employment, health, and property. And I think right now, safety needs are probably some of the most important needs, especially in this COVID era, and thinking about just how fragile employment is, health, and really just personal security during this time. So I think it's very timely that we're discussing the hierarchy. And with safety needs, these are important because they protect us from potentially dangerous objects or situations. So, for example, employment and health, having those things, property, that prevents physical illness, any sort of exposure to potentially dangerous elements. And it's important to recognize that threats are not just physical, they're also psychological. So we often fear the unknown. This is something that I think most people can acknowledge. It's scary not to know what's going to happen in the future. But there's also that importance of moving towards a sense of acceptance that we aren't going to know what happens in the future. But as long as we have these basic needs met, our physiological needs, our safety needs, that's ultimately going to help move us forward. And Maslow also talks about the importance of routine and familiarity. Again, two concepts that in our current time are really important. Humans function best when we have a routine. Humans are creatures of habit. We like the familiar. We like being able to know how our day is going to look. And getting these basic needs met is just one way to be able to help create a daily routine, to help us keep the familiar going, and ultimately being able to help us meet our physiological and safety needs. So we've gotten a bit of a background on the basics. So now I'm going to turn it over to Lucinda to talk more about our psychological needs.
Thank you, Charlie. Now, Charlie very well presented that about our basic needs. When we cannot meet our basic needs, we're having difficulties with our personal development and growing. And many children who was experiencing adverse life experiences and they didn't meet those needs, later on, unfortunately, they are always experiencing that baggage of sense of dissatisfaction and difficulties. And another important aspect for our development, being able to meet our psychological needs. And those needs are sense of belongingness and love needs. And all of us, because we're social creatures, we need to have that sense of belongingness. And first time when we're experiencing that sense of connection and belongingness, it comes from our early childhood, and our caregivers, our families, they provide. And if family environment was loving, supportive, healthy, and very balanced, it gives opportunity for very harmonious development of your own sense, your core concept, who you are. And it's very important for us to have the sense of belongingness and being accepted by others. And we have three major roles probably like which represented in different type of relationships, like our family, like it's our first circle of interactions in our life, first when we are experiencing, after we are developing little bit wider social connection and circle, it's come from our friends. Social interactions is like school, later college, your major profession where you work, and intimacy, which is extremely personal and very important because, again, how I mentioned, as a social creatures, we have that sense to love and be loved. And our social groups, they can be divided a different way. We can have our professional group, we can have our professional associations that we connect with those associations. It helps us to develop like our identity, professional identity. Same time we have social identity, who we are and how we see ourselves in society. We have religious identity, ethnic identity, cultural identity, and all those identities, they are presented in the group and social connections. And for us to feel that we are not isolated, it's important to develop these type of connections, because we know when people are experiencing isolation, and again, if we are not meeting those requirements for our needs, like our motivation to belong and be loved, we may experience isolation and, how I mentioned, anxiety, sadness, which later can grow in depressive mood and sense of dissatisfaction. And definitely if someone is experiencing this for a long time, it may be a major issue. And I would like to talk here about self-esteem needs. And Maslow, he divided the self-esteem like on two major levels, like low esteem and higher level of esteem. And by low esteem level, he was mentioning that all of us, we have a need to be respected. We have a need for accomplishments. We have a need to be accepted. We have a need for recognition. It's very important because it shapes our, again, who we are, how we see ourselves, and how we're represented in society. And it gives like other connection. It's about the status needs, ego needs, and those needs, they are very healthy needs, because in society, especially when we're talking about developed societies, industrial way developed societies and civilized societies, it's a lot of expectations, and if we are meeting those expectations, we are accepted, we are not feeling being secluded, because we can meet those requirements. And expectations, they can be different. You can have your own expectations, your parents can have expectations for you, and society may have expectation. And many students, they probably experience those moments when they feel like they are under high level of expectations, their own, and society, or college, or parents, because it helps them to develop their ego needs and feel like they have that status, they reach that level of recognition. When Maslow was talking about high level of self-esteem needs, he was mentioning about you need to be able to respect yourself, but be able to respect your own self and have that self-confidence for yourself and sense of importance that you were able to achieve your expectations and you were able to reach that level of satisfactions. Definitely you first need to reach that level of low level of needs, but we cannot divide them because it's very interconnected, and one level is promoting next level. And again, sometimes, unfortunately, when people, they cannot feed that needs of their self-esteem, they may experience sense of inferiority because they feel like they are judged by others because they don't meet those criteria. And unfortunately, sometimes they can be very negative about themselves too, and they may lose that healthy self-belief toward themselves, and it may affect on again, how they represent themselves. And we know many young people, they have difficulties if they are not accepted by their peer groups. And it creates sense of rejection. And that's why it's very important be able to go through those levels and meet all criteria of your own self-development. And now we will move toward self-actualization.
All right. So we have reached the top of the pyramid, at least with the original five needs that Maslow first proposed. But a basic way to define self-actualization is the realization of one's full potential. And self-actualization is rooted in a growth motivated stance and also strengths based, looking at what a person brings to the table, helping someone to see, what are the things about me that, you know, that are good, that I respect about myself, kind of linking back to that sense of esteem, which you need before you can progress on to self-actualization. Right? And I mentioned before intrinsic motivation as opposed to extrinsic. So the best way that I could define the two is to use an example. So let's say that a person is struggling with substance abuse. A person with intrinsic motivation is going to naturally have a sense of wanting to move towards recovery in order to better their life. Meanwhile, a person who might be driven more towards extrinsic motivation, that could be due to being faced with some sort of ultimatum, or having to do it because they were court ordered or mandated or something along those lines. And typically we see that intrinsic motivation is going to be more effective in the long run than extrinsic motivation. And that's because it comes from within. That's because a person is genuinely striving to do better. And it's also important to remember that self-actualization encompasses a sense of maturity. And as Maslow described, being fully human. So that means really tuning into all aspects of what it means to experience the world as a whole, as a person. And something else to discuss when we talk about self-actualization, and this is such a broad topic, it's so hard to sum it up in just a presentation like this, is there are moments of self-actualization that many people experience, and maybe you have too, called peak experiences. And a peak experience is a time when a person isn't striving. A person is, quote unquote, perfectly content, feeling relaxed and unconcerned for themselves. And what that means is that ultimately during this peak experience, their attention is turned towards others. It's that sense of maturity. And again, we can think about some different examples of behaviors that help us move towards self-actualization, sort of like signs. That might be trying new things, taking risks, being able to take responsibility and initiative for yourself and your actions. So, taking the responsibility and initiative to address any sort of, academic obligations that you have, relationship and other relational obligations that you have. These are responsibilities, and of course it can feel really overwhelming, but to be able to realize your full potential and really hone in on those strengths, that requires taking responsibility and initiative. Also the basics, hard work, putting in as much effort as you can in a way that feels authentic and genuine. Also thinking about honesty, and this isn't even just honesty with others. This is also honesty from an intrapersonal stance. So we know that intra is within, inter is between. So while of course it's always so important for us to be honest with others, we have to also be honest with ourselves, and recognizing our strengths and recognizing areas that are growth edges and where we still have room to be able to further ourselves. that's another really important component of self-actualization that, we don't necessarily realize, is that yes, it's the realization of your full potential and sort of a culminating moment, but there's still work that we have to do within this space to be able to really fully meet this need. And there's one other thing I'd like to discuss too, and that is accepting the unfamiliar. This is another really important part of what it means to self-actualize. And that comes with maturity, is being able to acknowledge and accept that unfamiliar things, the unknown things that make us feel uncomfortable, are ultimately going to happen. That's part of the human experience, or being fully human. And to be able to take steps towards being more comfortable with that unfamiliarity, that not knowing, and being able to just tolerate uncertainty is a sign of growth, and a really important part of self-actualization. And this is a point that I also really want to drive home, is that we are all capable of achieving it. As we move from those basic needs to our psychological needs, we are able to get there. It's a matter of being able to take those steps and recognizing that they're going to be ups and downs. It's not always perfectly linear, but sometimes that realization that we have the capability of achieving it regardless of our circumstances, any sort of barriers that we might face, these are all really important things to keep in mind that can help spur us forward, recognizing that we have the ability to be able to self-actualize, that this is not some completely far off concept that is impossible for anyone to achieve. It's there, and we have the ability to reach it. And now that I've kind of laid the groundwork of self-actualization, Maslow kind of added on to these initial 5 needs. And Lucien's going to talk a bit more about these, like aesthetic needs, different cognitive needs, and just to kind of give a bit more detail as we continue to sort of move past what Maslow initially stated. So I'm going to turn it over to Lucien.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
And how Charlie mentioned later, when he was reviewing motivational needs, he added 3 needs like cognitive, aesthetic, and I will talk about the last one a little bit later, transcendental needs. He noticed that people have desire for learning, like it's our intellectual needs. We would like to learn, we would like to discover, we would like to get familiar with our environment, we would like to be open for new experience. And he realized that education and learning needs for intellectual growing, it helps people to have very well-rounded understanding about their own self and understanding of the world and the knowledge which is there. And many people, they have a very high craving for the intellectual knowledge. And another form of the highest needs, like what was considered after psychological needs, like cognitive and aesthetic needs, he realized that people also have very good understanding and desire to observe and absorb beauty around them. And the beauty can be presented different way. You can really be connected with beauty of the nature. You can be connected with beauty of the music. You can be connected with beauty of the artwork, poetry, and people have those needs because it helps them to see world differently and explore something which is maybe not as visible, because those type of information, like for example, we will take like anyone who has a need for intellectual growing, like for example scientists, the way how they can understand the world, like in their very advanced level of formulas. And if you hear like or if you had the opportunity to read the biography of some scientists, they always tell like that formula was so beautiful for them because they had that level. They can explain what it means. This formula so beautifully explained everything, the laws of the universe, for example. It's again, it's such an advanced and high level, and it's really interesting that us as a human beings, we have a need for that. And we don't need to forget about this, that we really have capacity. Our brain and our mind gives us special capacity, and we need to try to develop. And don't forget about this. Yeah, sometimes it's challenging, and when we need to survive, when we need to take care of our basic needs, it's not always easy to think about high level. But you know what? I'm always thinking about people who experienced worse things in their life, but they never forget to follow their dream for the knowledge. And like when I will talk about other levels, transcendental needs, I would like to mention about Viktor Frankl, because he is one of the best representatives. He's a Holocaust survivor, and even being in camp, he was thinking about meaning of the life. And he was very happy to see that Maslow was talking about later, like later in his life, about self-transcendence need, because he realized that human beings, even in very worse condition, when they are not sure that they can survive all that horrible experiences, what they were witnessing and experiencing, but they still able to connect with their highest level, what he was calling holistic level of human consciousness. Because us, when we're reaching that level of self-transcendence need, it's like your expansion of your personal boundaries. This is what you're experiencing. You're experiencing like you're an integral part of some kind of spirituality, integral part of universe. And they were, he and Maslow and other people who was representing transpersonal psychology, like I think it was Pamela Reed,
Right.
Robert Cloninger. They were talking about those special needs, that it's a special level of consciousness.
Mhm.
And people can be very altruistic even if they are not going to benefit from them. They would like to give something. You're reaching on the level when being of others, that they will be in good condition, is becoming more important for you, and you're reaching the high level of spirituality. And spirituality is not only represented from religious standpoint, it's more holistic, it's higher, and everyone can experience this on their own level. uh, what is also important to mention here, we need to remember that we are very creative, and all of us, we have that sense for freedom. That's why I decided to mention about Viktor Frankl, that even being in this type of horrible situation, he was thinking about his inner freedom. It's really interesting because not everyone can reach that level of understanding, and how Charlie beautifully mentioned about maturity when he was talking about self-actualization. Yeah, you need to pass all those levels, and sometimes it's coming with life experience and age to be able to reach that level of consciousness and understand what it means. And as you know, like I would like simply mention in psychology by Viktor Frankl, like his type of therapy that he was providing, it was logotherapy, logos, which means like a meaning, and he was helping people to find that meaning, which is like high existential level.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if anything, Charlie would like to add.
Oh no, I was just I resonate just with that, and with not just Viktor Frankl's story, but just the existential piece that kind of links in really to you know to Maslow's hierarchy. It is sort of rooted in that humanistic stance, but there is also, especially as we move towards these self-fulfillment needs and getting to that higher level, so to speak, we are contacting so many of these seemingly abstract or existential aspects of the human condition. And I think that that's powerful. And obviously in the years that have transpired, there's been critique of Maslow's hierarchy, just like there's critique of every sort of theory that arises. But I think that regardless, there's still there's still so much that we can garner from all of this, and hearing you talk about it sort of awakened something in me. So that was great.
I think we're done today with our workshops. We tried to cover like all aspects, and I would like to check and see if we have any type of questions or comments. We will wait with Charlie. If anyone will have a questions, please, you can uh, ask a
Yes.
question. Yeah, and we will try to help you.
We've got the Q&A feature, and there's the chat feature. And for, again, as we're kind of making it known right now, we are still in a challenging time, a lot of transitions, a lot of obstacles and barriers that us as a society are facing right now. And we at CAPS are here. We welcome any inquiries, anyone who is interested in beginning counseling or just wants more information. We are here for you. So please feel free to reach out to us. Our email is umdearborncaps@umich.edu, and we wish everyone all the best moving forward, and to support you as you make your own way through Maslow's hierarchy and kind of taking this journey. So we appreciate you tuning in, and we hope that you are able to take things away from our presentation today.
Yes, I also would like to add like thank you very much to everyone, and hopefully it can help you to use some of those aspects and try to practice and be aware like which needs you were able to satisfy. Even you're experiencing different type of challenges, like it can be academic as a student, it can be life situation, it can be something related with financial aspect, employment, interactions, like social connections, like many people they are experiencing challenges, and even challenges how you're going to satisfy your intellectual needs and aesthetic needs, because there is some type of it's where things are lifted but we're still some way isolated. It's not always easy, but please practice them and remember we're here to help you. And if you will have any issues that you feel like you need to have more professional support, contact us and we will try to do our best to help you. Thank you very much.